All right, we're going to get started. This is a fire department, so if there is a call, the boys are going to be coming in and going to that wall. So if they have a call during this, expect to see some excitement. I'm going to introduce everybody. On my left, I have Alderman Wolfel, Alderman Propson, Alderman Busma, Mayor Hebel, Alderman Konkel, Alderman Schmitz, Alderman Hess. On the end, I have Sheriff Matt Joski from Kewaunee County. In the middle, I have John Newmeyer, Village President of Combined Locks. And on the end, I have Lieutenant Ryan Carpenter, Outagamie County. I have Sheriff Wiegert over here and County Administrator Todd Romanesco, County Board Supervisor Alice Connors, and Supervisor Irwin was supposed to be here. Alderman Snelson will be joining us remotely. I'm not sure where Mr. Thiessen is. So why we're here. Holstein's at a crossroads. It took us decades. Anybody that lived here before mid-90s, 2000, New Holstein had a lot going for it. It took decades to get where we are now. No one's coming to New Holstein to save us. We have to make our own opportunities. The proposal that we're going to get, that you've seen, some of you may not have, with or without the capital improvements, is significant. If you buy a high-efficiency widget, the savings come over time. We're looking at some significant savings over a 5-year period and beyond by going with this proposal. At this time next year, we should be in a pretty good position to meet what's coming as far as the COVID and shared revenue and things like that. There's been a lot of checks written at the federal and state level, and somebody's going to have to pay for them, and those people are you in this room. We're going to start with a presentation. For those of you that haven't seen the presentation so far, we've had it online. We've had it on a number of venues. It's been on YouTube through the library. But this is what we've got. Go ahead. It's consolidation. It's not defunding. The action or process of making something stronger or more solid. The action or process of combining a number of things into a single or more effective or coherent whole. Defunding is preventing from continuing to receive funds. We're still going to pay for public safety. Why consolidation? Cost savings, liability, resources, control, management, receiving a higher level of service, less redundancy in policy in policing by consolidating the services with a county, eliminates human resources, a number of issues, 24-hour, 7 days a week staffing, maintain a voice with regarding to staffing. All of these questions will be expanded upon by either my guests or the sheriff or the county administrator. This isn't something new. Calunet's been doing it since 1995. Brown County's been doing it since 1967. Population 5, 6, 7 times New Holstein. Sheboygan County's been doing it. Outagamie's been doing it. Our call volumes have been going down steadily. The argument that the police department may give, and it's a good one, is the calls that they have take more time to investigate. They're more intricate, they're more detailed. That's where the sheriff comes in with his investigative bureau. He's got 5 investigators. They can come down and assist with it and put the officer back out on the road. Right now, the officer could be tied up until the chief or the captain gets somebody in, maybe an hour, maybe sooner, maybe longer. The proposal we've asked for is 6 officers, 5 officers and a corporal. New Holstein has 6 full-time officers right now. All of them will have an opportunity to apply and be hired by the sheriff's department. The sheriff provided us with a patrol schedule for 6 officers. This is a 6-on, 3-off schedule. This is days, this is afternoons, this is an evening overlap, which with our call volume and the times, the sheriff has indicated that we can move that to a day overlap, and then you have a midnight shift. 1 officer on each shift, except for maybe if they move to a day overlap, you might have something overlapping. This is a New Holstein schedule right now. So this is September. On any given day, we're paying to have, the top one is the chief, that's administrative, and you either have an officer working with him or the captain working with him, and then the P is a school resource officer. So Monday through Friday, we're paying for 2.5 officers to be working days in New Holstein. And you have 3 to 11, and you have midnight shift. I'll turn it over to Mr. Romanesco. These are the figures.
So I presented this. This was the same presentation that I provided at the last council meeting. Sorry about the background noise. This is just a summary. You can see the city expenses that were identified for potential city expense for police department for the next 5 years. That's starting in 2021.
Can everybody see the color? The blue is the city, the green is the county, and the brown is the savings.
Can you speak up, please? We can't hear you back here.
The
Sure.
blue,
I can stand up.
the blue is for the city, the green is for the county, and the brown is for the savings.
Okay, you go ahead. So just to provide, I'm going to provide some detail on the next 3 years. So for 2021, just to break it down a little bit, I know there were quite a few questions regarding expenditures, even since the last 2 council meetings or committee of the whole meetings that I presented at. This is an example of the capital expenditures. We included the city costs that were provided to us as potential expenditures, and in this instance, they're identifying some squad video cameras. And then the squads. So we've talked about the squads as a significant savings. Right now, you're operating with 4. We're proposing 2. In this, we're showing, I know questions have come out about that. So the squads, equipped squads are about $77,000 per squad. These are over a 5-year period, so the city would be paying those over a 5-year period on a monthly basis, similar to what a lease or paying for the depreciation, essentially. Staffing. So I changed this a little bit from the last presentation based on an alderman question. You can see the wages and benefits. Basically, you're saving those wages and benefits from the staffing of chief and captain versus corporal and patrol officers. Also, the city dispatch. The city would not have to have the dispatch expenditures. We're including a part-time position, that's the $20,000 for supporting municipal court. Operating expenses, that's another area of significant savings where the city wouldn't have the same operating expenses. You would be paying the county for administrative fees and operating costs of about $57,000. It's 10% of salary and fringe. So the total in year 1 is about $192,000. just so you know where we get to the 1.6 overall, we did include the potential of capital expenditure of $500,000 at the city level. That's if it occurs, we put it in, called it out, said if it doesn't occur, you're still at about $1 million. If I just get through here, I'm not sure if he's gonna.
No, we can't see the numbers, so if you would just.
Oh, sure.
If you're saying you can see the numbers, we can't see it.
All right. Thanks for telling me that. I'll be more specific. So $500,000 is identified as a potential city expenditure for capital expenses in 2022. Whether you do that or not it would be a choice of the city council, of course. In this instance, we show it. You wouldn't require it with the county contract. Squads, in 2022, it was projected that you would be paying $55,500 for a specific squad, and I believe there was camera equipment involved in that as well. We're talking about an ongoing lease agreement with the county for the 2 squads. Wages and benefits, so I'll explain this a little bit since I didn't on the last slide. On this line, we're identifying about $93,000 in savings on salary and fringe. And in the county wages and benefits, the number includes things like a $600 per officer uniform allowance. I know that's come up. That's already in our number. It also includes our workman's comp, because the county's self-insured. Auto insurance, liability, that's all in our numbers already, enrolled into the wages and benefits. The city recognizes savings through dispatch. We included the 21,000 roughly half-time position for supporting municipal court. So the savings on staffing in that area is about 66,000. Operating expenses, city's projecting about 139,000. Administrative costs paid to the county would be 59,000. So overall, in year 2, if you include the $500,000, you're at a 745,000 savings. If you do not include the 500, you're still at about $240,000 in year 2. Last year, as an example that I'm going to provide here. Another squad purchase for the city was planned. Handgun replacement, I included in there just to indicate that yes, we would be equipping officers as well, and the city would pay for those expenses, and I have a slide to show you what those would be. In this instance, it's identifying the city would be purchasing those for about $5,000, and AUD replacement for $6,000. Again, another year to provide an example of wage and fringe, about $95,000 in savings in year 3. Same examples with dispatch and municipal court, so you're at about $67,000 on that line. So in the 3rd year overall, you're saving, one more slide, about $260,000. So go to the next. So this chart identifies year 1 about 193,000, year 2 with the $500,000 about 745,000, year 3 260,000, year 4 just over 203,000, and year 5 220,000. So 1.6 million with the $500,000 building project. If you exclude that, you're at $1 million. I think I've also discussed with people that have called, even if something happened around the dispatch savings didn't occur, you're still in excess of $600,000. So the numbers are what they are in terms of the overall contract. Just for transparency's sake, this is what the county's estimating for a vehicle cost fully equipped. It's about $77,000 since the numbers are difficult to see here. If you go back. Some questions about estimated officer equipment as well. I think that's about $10,000. So we're talking about, the county would be replacing handguns, vests, bulletproof vests, as we do annually with the sheriff. We have those conversations. Vests have a shelf life, 5 years. Handguns, so, you know, those numbers aren't all included in great detail here because we would have to determine what the city has. Part of the whole overall agreement would be seeing what the city has for assets in the county, acquiring those so that you're not purchasing all new officer equipment or all new squads.
And then there are some assets within the department that the county will be interested in, so those aren't considered into this at all, correct?
Correct. So, for example, in this scenario, I provided as if you're paying for 2 new squads right out of the gate, knowing that you have a couple squads that we may purchase, may acquire through the assets, you would be not having those expenses possibly for the first 3 years, so your savings would be more based on those.
And then one other topic that you and I discussed was New Holstein has an exceptional range that the sheriff's department and the agencies would be able to continue to use, and we would, you'd consider some financial relief.
We could do that.
Okay. So as you can see, this is some pretty serious numbers. Again, just to reiterate, it's 24 hours a day. Dedicated officers, meaning they're assigned to New Holstein. They come to New Holstein, they start their tour, and they finish their tour here. The request that the sheriff's department made was that they'd have a place to park the squads, which we already have, and a building to conduct business, which we already have. So the only difference that you will see is brown uniforms and silver cars, and the cars will say Calumet County Sheriff's Department, City of New Holstein. So to go on, I asked the gentleman on the end here, they are not on my side, they are neutral. But there's a lot of anxiety in the room that, well, what if? Well, Sheriff Joski, Kewaunee County, and he's got experience with Algoma. If you remember one of the first days, former Mayor Reese brought up how it was not a success. I'd asked Sheriff Joski if he could come and say a few words. Sheriff?
All right, I'm gonna keep myself a good distance here. Stand back, so I should think better on my feet. So Sheriff Matt Joski out of Kewaunee County. I've been sheriff up there for about 14 years, been in law enforcement for around 27. We did engage in a contract with Algoma. There's a lot of different ways to crack this nut. A lot of communities are going through the same struggle, right? You see dynamics in regards to population versus coverage. You look at working chiefs versus administrative chiefs. You look at dispatches and the consolidation of dispatch centers throughout the state. So there's a lot of varying levels and degrees to which you as a community decide where are we going with our law enforcement. Because really when it comes down to it, above the numbers, beyond the technology and the equipment, and even the staffing, it's about a relationship, right? That's what it's all about, is a relationship. When we see what's going around in this country, it's not because officers are not trained well enough. It's not because we don't have the right equipment, right? It's because something happened with the relationship between that community and the people that serve that community. So that really, to me, would be the paramount question, is to make sure that those visions, that idea of community policing, of what you want to see, that transcends all of this. Because this is all good. This is all good stuff, and we should commend these men and women that are crunching the numbers. They're looking a way to, again, try to crack this nut a different way. So what we did up in Algoma is we did a management contract. And it's interesting how the numbers really are consistent. So what the administrator pulled out in that $59,000 administrative cost, that's about what we charge the city of Algoma. So for an annual charge of $58,000, we manage the police department. So that was a different relationship. That city kept their staff. That city kept their equipment. That city kept their PD. And all we did was we planted basically our management into that PD. So we took over that role of payroll, discipline, HR. We took over a lot of that. And was it successful? It was. It worked along real well. I was basically the deciding factor in kind of where it was going. And my main reason was I have a chief deputy that's retiring. He was the go-to person. He was that person that was the manager day in and day out. Well, now that he is transitioning out and I'm bringing somebody new into that role, I didn't want to burden them to say, okay, not only am I going to bring you new into the role of chief deputy, but here you got a police department you got to manage. I just felt that's a lot to bring on to a new person. So I contacted the city. I said, how are you feeling about it? And they said, what, we could head in a different direction. So they then posted for a chief that is now a working chief. So that again, there's some differences there to maintain those staffing levels. One of the things I would tell you in our arrangement that was problematic, just as the old saying goes, you cannot serve two masters. That became an issue where, let's say we were doing some sort of disciplinary measure, we had HR, we had things going on, you always had to make sure there was that connect back to the city versus that being solid and consistent within my rank and structure, right? So that becomes a dynamic. So what you're proposing here is much more, I think, reasonable and probably much more of a healthy alignment versus trying to figure out how to keep this thing housed in two worlds. Because that's really where a lot of it, boils down to, is that, again, that relationship. Beyond that, I mean, the training, you want to make sure that training consistent, right? You want to make sure that policies, that was a big part that we brought a lot of our policy into their world, because when something does happen, that's the first question. Were policies being followed? Were they properly trained? Were they properly equipped? So, we had a lot of things going on that this arrangement's gonna be much easier for your community because you're literally handing that off, right? You're handing off saying HR, liability, equipment. I mean, that's a huge, kind of a headache. That's off the city and transition to someone else. But again, what it comes down to is that relationship. We really prided ourselves, even though, again, it was their staff, their uniforms, nothing changed. We still wanted to make sure that we were maintaining that community relationship. And that was something that we really prided ourselves on, and it's something that continues. So even when we departed from that arrangement, they hired the new chief, we're working hand in hand, and we continue to train alongside those men and women. We, share anything that we can in regards to resources. So again, from where you're at right now, this is an option. This is something to look at. The numbers that they've crunched to say, here's what we're spanning out in 5 years, that's a significant savings. But it still comes down to really the value that you put on an autonomous police department versus having a sheriff's department come in. And that again comes down to relationships. So that's just kind of in a quick nutshell. So from our perspective, was it successful? Absolutely. We could continue that had my staffing model continued. But again, with that transition within my rank and structure, I didn't feel comfortable. We had a conversation. I said, we could just as well head in that other direction. And it worked well. We continue to work well to this day. So just a little different way to, again, crack that nut. So just putting that out there, and I thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Sheriff. You'll stick around for a few questions?
Absolutely.
And then what about the third year? Did you guys get an award?
Yeah, so actually in regards to, again, the quality of service, Algoma was ranked within the top 10 of safest cities. So when we talk about call volume, follow-up, the clearance rate, IBR, all the things that go on in the backstory of a police department, it was getting done. I think that in bringing it to a larger organization, this was spoken to a bit here, you do have those resources, right? I worked for a city police department for 13 years before I ran for sheriff. So I understand the pride of a small police department, but I also understand the limitations, all right? The number of times that I might have responded to an assault, a domestic, a burglary, it was few and far between. So having the sheriff's department where they're cycling through these calls, they're handling these calls, you're bringing a great deal of expertise to those calls then, that they're going to be handled consistently. I can tell you that between the district attorney's office, probation and parole, clerk of courts, as far as consistency and documentation, that was a huge thing that we got feedback quite often, that they loved the transition, the fact that when they would get these reports, the processes were fluid, right? They were consistent. When you got some of these, these smaller agencies, again, I was one of them. I was an officer, and all of a sudden I have a domestic. I might have a domestic for 6 months. And now you go, how did I do this? How does that go, right? And so when you've got a larger organization, I mean, whether that's good, bad, or ugly, the fact is, they're engaging in these types of calls, handling the evidence processing, handling the interviews, it becomes more fluid and consistent. So you actually see a more efficient department, a more efficient fluid movement because of the frequency of which they're handling these kind of cases. So that in the end did reap some benefits in regards to the fact that we were able to actually improve on the UCR, IBR, the incident-based recording, as far as index crimes and so on. So it was an improvement. We definitely brought them along and brought them up. And we, again, handed them off better than we got them. I would say that. I think we're very proud that we left that department better than we found it. And now that new chief is carrying on that same role. So, yeah.
Thank you. The next one is that I asked to come is John Newmeyer. He's the village president of Combined Locks. He's got a pretty unique story in that Originally, when I ran for mayor, what I thought the best case scenario would be a Kiel-New Holstein alliance, kind of a metro like Village President Newmeyer had with Fox Valley Metro. But I found that there's a lot more hoops to jump through, and it would have been a lot more difficult to accomplish. And this was, it's kind of fell in my lap with talking to Mayor Ettinger from Brilliant. So John, if you want to describe your experience.
First of all, does anybody know where combined lots is? Okay. We went through a rather unique situation within the last 10 years. As he briefly described, we went from foregoing our own police department, which was a very, very tough decision, and merging it into Metro. A lot of talks, a lot of things went on. Our first concern was, of course, for our residents. Secondly, for our police officers. We had a staff that was second to none and very proud of it. One of the key points in merging with them was they took into their department, into Metro, all of our full-time officers at their full rank, at their full pay, and their full benefits. We were not going to leave our people behind. That was a very good situation. To this day, Metro is a good department. It just didn't work out. It didn't fit our needs for what we needed and what we wanted in basically a small town community. We are bordered on the south by the town of Buchanan. We partnered with in this venture with Allegheny County. The west is Kimberly, the north is Little Chute, the east is Cacao. We went into the situation with Metro with our eyes wide open. We committed to 5 years. And like I said, our residents just didn't feel, to use a term which I hope I don't offend anybody, we were the red-headed stepchild in the Little Chute Kimberly combined lots merger. We were the smallest one. We required the least amount of calls and attention. We understand that those officers have to be where the calls are going. What our situation needed and wanted was we wanted a presence. And we had our own department. We never encouraged our officers to write tickets. It was their own decision. Not to offend anyone else, we are not a, what is the little town over there? That's
Rosendale.
Rosendale. I even stopped at a gas station there one time, they were selling t-shirts, Rosendale, with a ticket. We never encouraged our guys to go out there and write tickets. We never had quotas. We wanted compliance and not citation. And we always left it up to the officers to do that. We are a friendly bedroom community. We have one major employer that employs about 350 people now. We went through a couple of buyouts. Used to be Appleton Coated, it's Midwest Papers. We have three churches, 4 bars and restaurants. We are a bedroom community where you come home, you relax, you recreate. Our parks are phenomenal. If you've ever been up there to our trail system and our parks, we're a great place to recreate for a weekend or a day or whatever. But we wanted that presence. When Allegheny County reached out to us after that 5-year period, we had 2 choices. We were either going to put the band back together and form our own department again, or because our neighbor to the south, Buchanan, already had a partnership with Allegheny County, which they loved, let us join in on. We went in with open eyes and a presentation. We have never, ever been sorry for partnering with Buchanan and bringing in Allegheny County. We went that extra step. We even had what they call an LES officer, is that correct, Rick? We paid for him separately. He is just for the village of combined lots. They let us interview from the pool of sergeants who we wanted there. In essence, this man is a small town police chief, and that's what we presented that position to him as. He maintains an office in our municipal center. He works the community, and he is there to respond to residents. We just had in fact, when we talked about response times, we had an incident at our municipal center, which is a big ballpark area, and we had kids come up and play ball there. I believe it was a domestic situation, and within minutes, there was Metro there, Allegheny County was there, I believe other departments had responded as well. One of the residents called and said, hey, what was going on that all those people were there, because his backyard was up in the ball. He said, I've never seen that many cars that quick in that place. We have a response time that is second to none. We have a relationship that is second to none, and it is saving us approximately $200,000 a year. We have never looked back from that commitment a couple of years ago to join with Allegheny County. They have been, the open lines of communication are fantastic. Now, I'm not telling you what to do. I don't know your particular county and your people. I don't know your elected people here, but I can guarantee one thing. They're going through hell trying to decide what to do. And they're never gonna please all of you. To this day, I have people that say you never should have joined Metro. I have people that say you never should have left Metro. You're not gonna please everybody all the time. And if you do, you're gonna succeed at nothing. But I just wanna tell you, you're gonna be leery of doing this. You're gonna be afraid. But you have to work at it. We had to work at it. Allegheny County works at keeping the open lines of communication and meeting our needs. It's gonna be work no matter whether it's your own department or you hire out. I didn't prepare this presentation. I'm gonna end this now, but I will be available if questions come up later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our guys are second to none. I pretty much wrote a death wish as far as their friendship when I proposed this. Neighboring chief gave me the stink eye as soon as he came in here. I'm the mayor now. I need to come up with some bold ideas that are gonna work and not jeopardize the safety of the citizens. Everybody in here, we all want what's best for New Holstein, right? But our ideas of what's best for New Holstein might be a little different. So I've asked these gentlemen to come in, and Lieutenant Carpenter, he's run the show. So he's gonna do what Sheriff Wiegert is gonna do. So if he could describe what that entails, and what we might need to look for, or what we might need to do as a community if things maybe aren't working right in a certain area.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm Ryan Carpenter. I'm a lieutenant with the Allegheny County Sheriff's Department. I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 26 years. I am in charge of our contracts for the Sheriff's Office. And right now we have 4 contracts. We have the town of Buchanan, the town of Greenville, the town of Freedom, and the village of Combined Locks, which you heard from the president here. And they're all very successful. Most recently, we ended up, the town of Freedom, we ended up contracting with them, and there was a little point of transition there, some time, transitioning into going from a PD, which they had, to a contract with the Sheriff's Department. But it's been over a year now, and they are very, very happy, extremely happy with the services that we're able to provide. And, that's one of the things, Sheriff Kosky ended up talking about it. We are able to provide what I believe is a superior service. And, looks like with this proposal, you're going to have 6 officers. When we came into the town of Freedom, we put a posting up at our sheriff's office. Hey, anybody interested in the town of Freedom? We have a position there that's opening. We had a number of officers sign up to interview for that position. We went in front of the town board, and the town board was the one that chose that officer. So it wasn't the sheriff that said, oh, okay, we got these slugs over here, we're just gonna put them in the town. It wasn't that way at all. We had, there's a lot of advantages to working in the town for the sheriff's officer. So we have a lot of interest in it. So they signed up, they interviewed, and they were chosen and became part of that town. And the relationships that Sheriff Kosky indicated, they're huge. Not only the relationships with the officer that's working in the town, but the relationships with the sheriff and the administration. There's a lot of communication going on. I'm constantly on the phone on a regular basis with my officers, asking about what's going on, what's happening. And I'm also on the phone with the village administrators and the leadership in the towns and village that we serve. So it's a really great relationship. We've been doing it for over 20 years, and every contract that we have, they're very satisfied and very happy.
Thank you. So you heard what some other communities have done, and we're going to open it up to public input. This is what you're all here for. We,
Do you have Ken back there?
what's that?
Ken Irwin is back
Yeah,
there?
County Supervisor Ken Irwin arrived. Thanks. So what we're gonna do is, we'd like you to come up front. Sit- Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ken.
I think this is a great opportunity. I've never introduced myself to the city of New Holstein. I know a lot of the board members and citizens of the city, but I'm Ken Irwin. I'm your county supervisor, District 20, which is all of New Holstein except Ward 3. Ken Draheim happens to be the representative there. So, and I just happen to be on the Protection of Persons and Property Committee. And what I have nothing to do with the numbers, such as these two folks sitting right here. But all I can say, I will support the fact that the county will give us great protection. The average citizen, as I believe somebody here mentioned, you probably will never know the difference other than the cars being a different color and the uniforms a different color. That's about all I can say at this time. You will be getting a very good product. I think you're going to have more resources available to you as was just explained. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Alice, did you want to say anything at all, or are you good?
I'm fine, I'm just here to listen.
Okay. So what we'd like you to do is come to the front and say your name and address the council.
And I just want to add to the individual comments will be limited to 5 minutes, and any personal issues and injurious comments about individuals will not be allowed and stopped immediately.
So whoever like to go first, podium's yours.
Bring my mask on a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for providing the hearing for us to be heard. Thank you for providing the hearing for us to be heard. My name is Lori Anhalt. I've been a citizen of New Holstein all my life. Well, I shouldn't say it, 4 years. My husband and I were in Kiel, but moved back to raise our family. I'd like to start by personally thanking all the citizens who came here tonight to show support for our current police department and the choice of referendum vote. I had a different speech prepared yesterday about questions and concerns about the proposal, but after hearing alternate news last night that the city's attorney and union representatives for our officer met to discuss severance pay, I knew most of my questions may fall on deaf ears. I do have a few questions, and the first question I have is, I wonder why our mayor didn't ever sit down and go over numbers with our own Chief Reedy. Your office is located 2 flights of stairs above his office, and I'm sure if you would have asked Chief Reedy, he would have been more than happy to climb up them. I'd also like to know when you started looking into abolishing the city police department under Wisconsin legislation, Article 62.13. 2S. These are the protocols that you have been following from day one. This has been a very stressful month for many of our New Holstein citizens, and the thought of losing another entity of our community is disheartening. For the officers, dispatchers, and their families, I am truly sorry for what you've been put through, and I hope that you know we wish we could have done more to stop the proposal. As a community, we will need time to process the change that may be ahead. And one thing for all of us to remember is that we are a strong community, and we will get past this. If the proposal goes through, we will need to show support and respect to the County Sheriff's Department and his officers. I believe in Sheriff Wiegert, and I have the utmost respect and confidence that he will not let this community down. I would like to suggest, after the vote is decided, that a quarterly roundtable committee be established, consisting of sheriff or corporal, New Holstein city officers, and at least two or three New Holstein citizens. A committee that would be set up for the citizens to come and voice their concerns and get to know those officers who are serving their community. I still say, let the people of New Holstein decide and vote referendum. Thank you.
Lori, did you want an answer?
Yeah, please.
So I explained it the first time, and I explained it at the town hall with the mayor and Mr. Jacobson, that everything was on the table. So this shouldn't be a surprise. Like I said, I thought that a Kiel-New Holstein alliance would be the best case scenario. We're excellent together when I was on the department, but it just wasn't something that was gonna work. Mayor Ettinger had approached me on their scenario and had talked to the sheriff and the county administrator, and most if not all know I lost to the sheriff. So politics are politics, and I'm not too big for my britches that I can't call the sheriff up and say, hey, what can you do for us? And that's why we're here. As far as talking to Chief Reedy, I did talk to Chief Reedy about some plans that I would like to have seen. They fell on deaf ears. But your last one with the sheriff having an ad hoc committee, we talked about that yesterday. And that's definitely something that he wants to do, have an alder member, community member, a number of different individuals on that to make sure we're getting the best product that he can provide.
Excuse me, I just have to ask one more question. You said you had some different proposals for Chief Reedy, but you never went over the numbers that he was giving you with the budget that was presented for a 10-year budget. The only person that came to him was shortly before the last meeting that we had and talked to him about the 7th officer that was denied. You didn't go over the numbers to even look and consider any budget cuts.
How can
It
you?
was just all put on that one list, and that's the budget you went off of. Nothing was ever discussed.
I presented it to the council. It was a significant amount of money, and there's no way he could have come up with those numbers. Could you have? $200,000? Next. Doug, were you up? Go ahead. No, face the council.
I'd like to face everyone that I'm talking to.
You're talking to the council. That's why you're here.
They don't listen. All right, I'll speak up so everybody can hear me then. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Tikkanen. I'm the police captain here for New Holstein. As I stand before you tonight, I have to admit that I'm angry. I'm angry not just for myself and my fellow officers who may soon find ourselves unemployed, but I'm angry for the citizens of New Holstein. I'm angry that the citizens of this community may soon find themselves without this department as it exists today. Because I would argue that there are no officers that care more about this community than the ones that currently serve it. Despite my anger, tonight I'm here to focus on the positive. Much of the conversation about this merger has focused on numbers, on costs and savings promised. Tonight I would like to focus on some numbers that Mayor Hebel has not presented. Our department consists of 6 full-time officers, the chief, myself, and 4 full-time patrol. Of those 6 officers, we have a combined total of nearly 60 years of service to the city of New Holstein alone. Our 4 part-time officers combine for a total of 14 years. Many of our officers have personal connections to this city that only strengthens their resolve to provide its citizens with the best level of service. 2 of our officers have graduated from New Holstein High School. My own daughter will one day attend New Holstein School District when she's of age. Other of our officers have worked here for the majority of their careers. While I have no doubt that Calumet County deputies are experienced individuals, they do not have the experience in this city that our current officers do. Mayor Hebel promises the level of service provided by the county will meet or exceed that of which we currently provide. And in regards to technical skills alone, that may be accurate. He has promised that every officer here will be given a fair shake at getting hired by the Sheriff's Department if this merger passes, but really that's no guarantee of anything. At the end of the day, what needs to be considered is the level of service provided to the citizens. The benefit of being a small department is the level of personal service we are able to provide the community. Many of you, including those sitting on the council, have previously had a question about the operations of this community. You're able to call and speak to Chief Reedy directly. As an officer who's worked for other communities, I can tell you this level of personal connection with the head of a department is rare. And this is just one example of the type of personal service our department currently provides. We know the members of this community because we are a part of this community. We know your family members, we know your personal connections in the city, and we know the history of this city. I speak now directly to the council when I ask that these citizens we worked so hard to protect be given a true voice in this decision. I ask that the opinions presented here tonight be seriously considered by the council and that they remember that they exist to serve the citizens of this community and act as representatives of what the community wants and not what their own personal wants dictate. For I can tell you that as an officer, I have never received such support from the citizens of this community as I have since the conversations about this merger have begun. I have been flagged down multiple times by people wishing to express to me their disbelief that this merger conversation is even occurring and their sincere hope that our department as it currently exists can remain. You may choose not to listen to what I have to say tonight, as I'm only one person, and admittedly someone with a stake in the outcome of this. But you need to listen to the collective voice presented to you this evening by your constituents, because that is your job, and that is what you were elected to do. I speak now to the citizens of this community when I say, please speak with those on the council and make them aware of what you want. Do not allow this to be a case where our city council can claim ignorance of public opinion if they choose to vote without a referendum. Hold them accountable to be your voice in the community. Thank you.
I'll go next. Hard act to follow, but I'll try. Can everybody hear me in the back? My name is Sue Neeson. At the past committee of the whole meetings, Alderman Busma and the mayor advised the other aldermen not to vote on emotions, but to vote on the facts. Well, the fact is, none of the proposed changes are 100% solidified facts. They are proposed numbers from both the city and the county. When a proposed budget is turned in, it's basically a wish list for the council to pick through and approve or deny those items on the proposal. It doesn't reflect what the actual costs will be. Take the salaries and benefits of the city proposal. They should be pretty accurate as they're working off of last year's numbers and then figuring in a 2% increase. How did the county come up with their numbers? At the first meeting, they did say that those numbers would change after contract negotiations with the officers yet to be hired for those positions. The county is currently advertising for officers. How many positions are they actually looking to fill before they even look to fill ours? They've stated they can't fulfill this proposed contract without the hiring of officers, which are in high demand and short supply. What if you've already let our officers go and the county falls short of filling and training our officers in time for a January 1st start? We've been told our officers can apply, but they're not guaranteed a position. Not sure if I were one of those officers, if I even want to be hired by the county to patrol for a city that government's officials were so quickly to cut loose. For those officers hired, will they keep their seniority after serving their city for all the years, or will they be starting over? Will they receive comparable pay or take a pay cut? None of those details can be solidified without contract negotiations. If this is all about saving the city taxpayers' money, why wasn't there communication with our police department to find alternative ways to trim the proposed budget before looking into just getting rid of those positions and relinquishing our control of our city's law enforcement? If you vote for the county's proposal, we no longer have control over our city law enforcement or our budget. We will be at the mercy of the county going forward, as there is no going back, as it would be too expensive to start over, especially with officers in short supply. At the last meeting, you showed how quickly the proposed budget can change with a motion, second, all in favor, aye, and a part-time one full-time officer and a part-time dispatcher were removed from the 2021 budget. They took them off of there, add that back onto our savings. Lowering the dollars, on the wish list budget in 2022, there's a $500,000, $500,000 request to build a new garage and update the law enforcement facilities. Why can't other options be explored to house that one car not in use and save $500,000? Not that it would be approved by the board anyway, but yet they're using those numbers to reflect the huge savings. There are a number of items on the city proposal that are not on the county proposal. For one, the liaison officer proposed at $107,554 in 2021 is something that the county will be contracting directly with the school. I may be wrong, but don't we pay taxes for the school? So still costing the taxpayers of New Holstein money, just moving into someone else's budget. Are we no longer having crossing guards? That wasn't in there either. That's $6,965, and that's just for 1 year. Multiply that by our 5-year contract. Take that savings as well. Take that, make that reflect in your supposed savings. It's not just a matter of paying them, it's doing their background checks and training on those crossing guards as well. Would the leasing of vehicles be more expensive and nothing to show for it at the end of a 5-year lease? If the vehicles are being purchased by the county, wouldn't they be on the county's budget? We pay county taxes. Would we be paying for a portion of those vehicles through the county taxes and then also paying them to lease them? If we only have one officer patrolling and backup is needed, or there's another call needing immediate help, currently the county would be called to back them up. It's called mutual aid. Along with their SWAT team, diving team, investigators, they're not an added benefit to the city. They're covered in our county taxes. Should we contract with the county, can they provide mutual aid to themselves? Something else maybe we need to look into. There are many ways to trim expenses without the expense of losing our officers and dispatcher and displacing 11 people that have served our city and relinquished our control. The burden of voting on such a big proposal shouldn't fall on 8 aldermen with the tie-breaking vote going to the person proposing the change. The City of New Holstein taxpayers have spoken loud and clear. In my ward alone, I did a survey this weekend with 82 people. And out of those 82 people surveyed, 80 people felt that this should be something voted on by a referendum. 1 was in favor of the aldermen voting, and 1 didn't care either way. Aldermen, these people voted you into office to be their voice, not the mayor's, not your own, but to be their voice. You are looking to pass this through with an alderman's vote before year's end due to the end of the year contract with our officers and unintentionally or maybe intentionally failed to meet the deadline to get a referendum on the November's election ballot. I recommend they extend the contract for our police department for at least the next year, put a referendum on next year's election if it's still needed. No need to hold a special vote costing the taxpayers more money like it did in the primaries. Then take the next year to get real numbers and true comparisons with maybe an ad hoc committee to be sure that we're comparing apples to apples for true savings. Then educate the residents with real numbers and focus on building our community up instead of tearing it down. And look for alternative ways to save money. Thank you.
I'm Pam Van Dre. I have a couple of things to say. I was fortunate enough to witness firsthand what happens in the city of New Holstein when there is a police call. and from the comfort of my recliner in my living room. The New Holstein, all of a sudden I heard gears grinding. I looked up, and here there's a guy getting out of his car and running the other way between the houses. The City of New Holstein police officer was chasing after him, and I lost sight of that. A few minutes later, City of Kiel officer came in. Not too long after that, the Calumet County K-9 unit came in. This whole new scenario looks really good on paper, minus a few things that aren't in, as Sue just went over. Tell me why or how, in the future, anything could work any better. We can save money, sure, $200,000 a year, great, that's a lot of money. But at the same time, are we giving up anything of our safety? I can't see how anything could go any better than the way it was. Kudos to the New Holstein Police Department. You stated that it's hard to find replacement officers. We merged with Calumet County. They probably have the same problem. Once we merge, that's a 5-year commitment. No turning back for those 5 years. That's scary as crap. The old saying is, a new broom sweeps good. And no doubt in my mind, everything will go good at first. But what is our guarantee? Minus some officers, we have a large portion of Calumet County in the valley. They need officers there, we need officers here, but well, we're just a little tiny community away from the big city. Yes, the county seat and the sheriff's department is 6 miles away, that's fine. But what is our real guarantee that things are going to stay going well during this time? I'm with Sue and a lot of others. Let's look at the budget. We don't need a $500,000 building. Must our existing officers reapply after they've taken care of us citizens in the city of New Holstein for so long? I don't think that's fair. You want to go down to a corporal and so many officers? Go down to the chief and so many officers and let that work its way out. If ever he decides to leave, then go to that corporal and other officers. But that's just my thoughts and my personal opinion. Thank you.
My name is Becca Mosier. Becca Mosier. I was Becca Zabon. I say that all the time so people have a frame of reference. Because I married an out-of-towner and I have a new name. My first 5 minutes, I'm actually reading a letter for someone else who couldn't be here. So then I'll finish his letter and then I can have my time. This is a letter from Tom Myers in New Holstein. Thank you to the Common Council for allowing my statement to be read into the record. I am Tom Myers, retired from veterinary practice and veterinary clinic ownership from 1971 to 2000. I have lived at the same address in New Holstein since 1983. Prior to vet school, I worked in the contracts department at an aerospace company. What do Halloween traditions, Christmas decorations, and significant police department issues have in common? There's more than money involved. Local control, cultural reasons, and civic pride are other intangibles that need to be considered. Money is always important, but what else may be lost? We haven't had time to find out. I'd like to know, wouldn't you? The comparison has been made to business mergers. 2 points to think about. The police department is not a profit-making business. Neither is any public service funded by taxpayers. Think NASA, CIA, FBI, genetic and viral researchers. We reap multiple intangible rewards from all of these nonprofit endeavors. Business mergers do not always work out after an economic short-term gain. Unsuccessful mergers often consider only short-term gains. Successful conscious capitalist companies like Costco, Google, and Starbucks, all of which have market-beating returns, thoroughly consider all the available options before making such a long-term move. They survey all the stakeholders. In our case, it would be the community, the full and part-time staff of the police department at all levels, the board of directors, and vendors. Well-publicized hearings and study committees are involved in the process. Surveys are anonymized to ensure receiving the most honest answers. New Holstein Police Department and citizenry has not been polled to identify other possible concerns. It is a big undertaking, I recognize, and that is why more time is needed. Tonight's meeting provides an excellent example of our city not abiding by county standards to preserve public health during the pandemic. I do not support the decision to meet here, but I do recognize that it represents local control easily acted upon despite county standards. If permission had been sought from the county health department, would we be meeting now? Finally, I remember a company that acted to cut costs without considering the big picture. They moved operations to low labor cost states, and soon quality went downhill. Local workers with all their talents and skills were lost to the company. The company could no longer contribute to New Holstein. A culture of shared work experiences vaporized. How did that work out for Tecumseh? Some of their failure is attributed to chasing the short-term gain of lower labor costs. And here we are, left to pick up the pieces. It's about the money, yes, but it's a lot more than dollars and graphs. I respectfully request an extension of the current contract for 1 year. I would add a minimum of 1 year, while we answer these questions. How well have rush decisions worked in your lives? Has haste ever made waste for you? What reasoning led representatives of municipalities who turned down this idea have to say? Why hasn't Chilton, with its proximity to the sheriff's department, moved in this direction? If we want to reframe some aspects of policing, won't it be easier to do locally? Captain's duties, neighborhood cops, de-escalation techniques. Is there widespread agreement or consensus? Is the information widely available? I was helped through email by Mayor Hebel, thank you. But finding the information on his Facebook page was not a place I would have thought to look. Thank you for your time. Tom Myers. So I stand here as a lifelong, almost citizen. I grew up here, and my parents owned a small business in town, so I know the struggles of small business owners. I went to Madison, then I lived in Chicago for 6 years, and I loved it there, so I know a lot of, when I talk about that, people always want to give sympathy, but Chicago's amazing. And I have experiences. I met my husband, he grew up in Nashville. The reason I share this is I lived in Nashville for 3 years, is I did leave, and I chose to come back, because I love this city, and I wanted to raise my children here, because I love the comfort of the small town that we live in and that I grew up in. The large city issues that policing faces right now is a huge hot button topic that we hear about all the time, and I know defunding is that word that you don't want us to use, and you want us to know the definition of it. We understand that. I understand that. New Holstein does not face the same issues as a Chicago, a Detroit, a New York. We are unique, we are special, we are small. That is a benefit. And I have seen a lot and heard a lot of negative comments coming from the mayor on his Facebook page. His mayor Facebook page is very enlightening to anybody who would like to see. You know, you do share some very valuable things there, and I appreciate that. But there's a lot of your supporters who chime in and say New Holstein is a garbage heap. Nobody wants to move here. They talk very badly about it, and I bristle. I feel very defensive because we have a beautiful city. Could we make improvements? Absolutely. Are there places that cut costs? Definitely. And let's talk about that. But is tonight truly the first time you looked at Chief Reedy and said, could you have found that $200,000? And he kind of was like, is that the first time you asked him? I mean, what a disservice. We are adults, and he is an adult. And the officers who serve us are adults. You ran on a platform of change. We know how that works out sometimes. Change can be promised, but the delivery isn't always there. Why would we rush in a decision to disband something that works? It's not broken. Is it expensive? Possibly, but it's not broken. And so for our aldermen to have on their shoulders the decision to make this without properly canvassing. So I wanted to speak to that when Sue spoke about her ward. What we did was we took 5 people who cared about this issue, and we got together and said, let's hit the pavement. So we rang doorbells. I'm sure some of you saw me at your door, and thank you for answering. I know nowadays it's weird. We don't do much face-to-face stuff anymore, and that's sad. We lose something when we fight on Facebook. And I saw that on the mayor's Facebook page, and I saw him saying things to people who elected him, or didn't, but who he's supposed to be speaking for, that were not respectful. And that hurts me because that is our mayor. We want our mayor to have a good relationship with our police chief and the officers. We don't want what's happening. So I will say that we talked to almost 400 people between Saturday and Sunday. I pretty much abandoned my family for the weekend. They do remember me, but barely. But I went around, and I and the other ladies, and I'm proud of us. We talked to 400 people. 88%, I crunched the numbers. 88%, sometimes they even let me finish my sentence. They said referendum. This should not be up to 8 people and the mayor. So if you want to go forward with this, do that. Go along with the idea, but do not rush to a decision before the end of the year. And I'm begging you, as the council, to not do this because it will not reflect well. The people in the city want a voice. They don't necessarily need the referendum to be the answer. They want that to be you hearing what they have to say. And you have time to present it to more people than the 8 of you that have had closed meetings and texting and talking. So we respectfully ask you to not rush to this. Negotiate with the amazing chief that you have. These are people in our community, and we love them. So yes, we are emotional about it. Don't say that like it's a bad thing. We love them, we care about them. We don't want to just throw that away and outsource it. And I appreciate your time, and I thank you very much.
Can I ask if anybody has any questions of the 3 gentlemen on the end? I don't want to keep you guys any longer. Appreciate it.
I'm just curious as to the time frame it took, the gentleman from Monmouth, from the time you started the process till you made your first connection. If you can give, I didn't get any sense of the timeline.
From the merger from going from our department to Metro, or from Metro to Allegheny?
I would say that your department to Metro, either, or both.
They both, either one took about 2 years.
Thank you, that was my
Like I said, I am not here, I do not have a dog in this. No, I just want to explain to you guys, we're here just to answer some questions. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know anybody in this room other than Lieutenant Carpenter, who's a hell of a guy. Yeah, what these people, what you people and your board is going to decide is not easy. Okay, I heard reference to Facebook. I'm an old guy, I don't do Facebook. When I go out, I talk to my constituents, I see them at the Pick and Save or Piggly Wiggly, I talk to them at the ballpark or whatever. I don't do Facebook, I don't do any of the electronic stuff. I'll text my wife once in a while. But these people are making a very, very hard decision. And it's not easy, and it's not all about numbers. The first thing you look at is, am I providing a service to my residents, to my taxpayers, that they want, expect, and deserve? And that's the first thing that you have to look at, and that they're going to look at. Money is not the preeminent thing. It's part of it. It's like anything else. Do I want to buy a Mercedes-Benz? Yes, but I can't afford it. They'll come get it in a couple of weeks. Am I going to put my wife in a U-Boat with no seatbelts? No. Life is full of compromises and working things out. And you've got to get the best possible product that you can afford that's going to serve your residents well.
And I think most of the people in this room understand that it may have to come at some time. Our problem is the timeline at which this has been done.
Ours was done, like I said, in about 2 years for each measure.
Right, thank you.
I've
I'm president, not mayor, and we have decided that we are elected officials, we are elected to make the tough decisions, to filter through all this information, and to make it on behalf of the residents. We decided to go forward with a formal board vote and not a referendum. But we did engage, like I said, for quite a bit of time. We left no stone unturned. Believe me, we had a number of meetings where I heard the same question over and over, but no one was ever denied an opportunity to get up at that meeting, express an opinion, or ask a question.
The gentleman from the Commonwealth, was the cost savings reflected in the mill rate?
I couldn't hear you. The cost savings what?
Was the cost savings reflected in the mill rate?
No, we did not lower the rate, but what we did with the savings is we have a unique situation where we do not assess for roads. So a lot of our money, which is taken in tax collection, goes to the road. We had decided many, many years ago, before I was on the board, that the roads belong to the public and they come out of the tax coffers. We do not assess for a road. You pay for a road one time in Combined when it's put in. After that, it is taken out of the tax coffers. So what we did was we plowed those savings back in, especially to the road program, other projects as well, but we did not lower the tax rate. There was no real savings, but the money was put to good use within the other parts of the community.
So are we done with these guys? All right, thank you.
I'd like to wish you all good luck. Remember, when you leave here tonight, you're still friends and neighbors.
And one thing I'll add again, as I stated in the beginning, there is a lot of ways to crack this nut. There are things that it's not an all or nothing proposition. Any of us that run an agency understand that there's a lot of things you do within an agency, whether that be, in regards to staffing, scheduling. There's some amazing, interesting scheduling options that can really realize some savings. So again, I think that we do want to look at every possible option because this isn't something that is an all or nothing proposition. Thank you.
My name is Mary Grove, and I don't have a lot of, I'm not going to look, I'm too nervous. To the alderpersons, especially Snelson and Propson, I walked your ward. I knocked on over 200 doors, which I think is probably about 190 more doors than you knocked on, according to the responses that I got back. Mr. Conkle and Mr. Busma, you're not out of the woods because I knocked on your doors as well. Of the 100 respondents that were willing to talk to me, 73 were aware of this proposal action and 27 were not at all. But of those 100 that were willing to take the 2-question survey, 78, count that as 78%, preferred a referendum. Why? Because they have no idea what's going on. Because the transparency has been severely insufficient. And I even had people slam their door on me because they were so upset. Only five wanted the consul and the mayor to make this decision. The remainder were undecided. Only 5 of 100 respondents. I think the gentleman that just left said it well. It took over 2 years for them to come up with a solution. And we're talking 2 months, maybe 3. Surprise, we got an idea for you. Some had questions that, as a surveyor, I told them I couldn't answer. A, I may not have known the answer, or 2, they wanted my opinion, which I wasn't there to give. I was there to get their response. Might be something you want to try. I was at the meeting where the sheriff stood up and presented about the jobs that he was going to have to fill. He was asked point blank if these officers would be eligible for those jobs. Of course they'll be eligible. They can apply just like everybody else. Well, guess what? What happens within a company when there's a job opening? Somebody from within the company gets to apply first. Where does it leave them? They're the outsiders. They're not the jailer looking for a job. I think that's something that should be considered. I understand that this item might not by law be referendable when research has been done about what it constitutes the need for a referendum, but I think because of the lack of transparency, that a lot more information needs to be given, a lot more numbers need to be crunched, a lot more creativity needs to be used, and you've got to be transparent to your constituents. We did not vote for you to we voted for you to represent us. And even if I didn't vote for you, you still need to represent everybody. And when we have a 78% that want a referendum, okay, there's just a couple other things that have come up this evening. I asked a gentleman from outside the area when this came up, I told him what was going on. You know what the first thing he said, which I think was just alluded to a few minutes ago, where will the money go? Anytime somebody's trying to cut a budget, it's because they want to put that money somewhere else. I hope it's our roads. Where's that money going? Where is it earmarked for? We don't know. So we'd like to know that. And then there's also a comment about the frequency and the advantage of the experience of the sheriff department and the gentleman that was on the left here about rotating and so forth. We're not looking for rotating. We're looking for our department. We're looking for our regular faces. We're looking for our members of the community. We're not looking for somebody to rotate from Darboy. And they say that's not going to happen. Well, I never thought I'd stand here in shock of disbanding our police department. Thank you.
My name is Rob Baldwin, and I'm a patrol officer here in Holstein. I'm the longest tenured patrol officer within the patrol ranks within Calumet County. I've worked with Sheriff Krieger on numerous cases when he was still in charge of the drug unit. I've been on the drug unit for 18 or 19 years. I've worked with his officers a lot, and we've had a lot of success, and we've worked well together, so I'm familiar with a lot of his people. And I have respect and very much regard for them. Loyalty. When I came to work for the New Holstein City 24 years ago, that is what I offered the city. The Police and Fire Commission conducting my interview asked me if they hired me, if I intended to stay here. They were concerned because there had been a lot of recent turnover, and I had other prospects. I replied that if I was hired by New Holstein, I would be loyal. I kept that promise. And along the way, dedication and commitment joined in. These are traits many of our officers possess. We are a cohesive group that responds wholeheartedly when needed. We are well educated and well trained. 4 of the 6 full-time officers have bachelor degrees. The numerous training opportunities granted us was one of the perks of working here. I was privileged to become the first drug recognition expert within Calumet County, and I was appreciative the city allowed me to attend this extensive training. Our officers have attended many hours of training sessions and conferences covering a vast array of topics, more than the average department allows. We each have our own niche of expertise within the department, which encourages us to rely on each other and develop the teamwork needed for success. Much of this investment will be lost to the city with the disbanding of NHPD. In spite of assurances, there is no guarantee we will all be hired by the county. Not all of us will apply for various reasons. The faces of the officers working here will change. Currently, most of us are well connected to the city, either living here or nearby, having gone to school here or raised here. As time passes, I imagine very few of the original officers occupying the deputy positions will remain. These new officers may live some distance away and are not a part of the community as we currently are. The Sheriff's Office does offer some different variety and opportunities, and lateral and upward movement within will not guarantee a continuous and cohesive group serving within New Holstein due to the different officers rotating in and out. It would take me too long to describe all the good qualities that the officers I work with possess. Chief Reedy does not micromanage us, but gives us the freedom to flourish, grow, and exercise discretion. He cares about the community and is involved in it. Above all, his utmost concern was always the safety of his officers. He never had the attitude of some, which is that it will never happen here. He took measures to make sure we had equipment and training for our protection. He brought on our chaplain, Dave Damcutt, who was a blessing and a strong supporter of our PD. When I consider some of our younger officers, I found it fortunate that we have the quality we do, considering how hard it is to find good officers in today's world. Last year, we hired a new police captain. I look forward to working with her and the level of capability and competence she brought to our agency. When I looked at the future of NHPD, it seemed bright. Now the council is willing to give this up to save taxpayer dollars the taxpayers will not get back. It was told us, when looking at this, it should not be based on emotion, but should be based on dollars and cents. If this is true, then why does the city operate a water park that runs a huge deficit every year? If based solely on the money, it should be shut down. But quality of life issues are hard to measure in dollars. This includes parks, pools, recreation, and having your own loyal, dedicated police officers who know the community. Most of our citizens would be surprised to know some of what we do have to handle in our community. While this is a safe place to be, anything and everything can happen here from time to time. We have had to handle drug overdose deaths on our streets. Someone using their child as a shield so a cop could not use his taser. A meth user putting a knife to his neck and yelling for the cop to shoot him. A fugitive from Philadelphia wanted for shooting 2 people was apprehended here 6 weeks ago. Last month in our city, 10 officers from 4 agencies were involved in apprehending a felon who attempted to escape by cutting holes through attic walls. We have arrested meth and heroin users and dealers in our city. Fifth offense drunk drivers. We see homes where children have to contend with syringes laying on the floor because the addicted parents are in no state to take care of their children. If you are not aware of these things taking place in your city, that is okay, because that is why we officers are here. It is our job to protect you from these things so you can rest easily and safely in your homes. We do not seek attention or news highlights for these things. All we ask is that you have our backs. And it is obvious that many citizens here tonight do. It is disappointing to see how the city has gone about this process. Little advance notice, faulty savings comparisons, and the one-sided approach to this is grievous. Not one member of the council has approached the chief about the pros and cons of this matter. The chief has been put in a bad light for being an administrative chief, but has anyone from the council